Hey guys, so for my final blog post for Paradox, I am going to sum up the last 8 that I've done. The topic has really been on looking at an environment and understanding how that impacts behavior and ultimately long-term performance. This curiosity came from our discussion around an individual's behavior based on their environment. And I really think in today's world, we're quick to point fingers at somebody and say that we don't like their behavior and see it through that frame without shifting and saying, well, maybe there's a cue from the environment that's impacting how this person is behaving. And that's what the change needs to be focused on, changing the environment to have people behave in more optimal ways that contribute to team performance. There's really two different orientations that an environment can have based on goals. So those are mastery orientation and performance orientation. And so in a mastery oriented orientation, the goals are focused on development and growth of the individual and gaining skills and feeling rewarded by knowing that you're getting better at things that are important to you. Performance orientation is all based on the outcome. So, you know, the money, the revenue, the status, power, those are performance-oriented environments, and that's what they focus on. The research shows that people that are in a mastery environment actually, over the long term, perform better, and they're more committed to the community and the well-being of the society as a whole. Some things that leaders can do to create a mastery-oriented environment are to create meaningful tasks that are aligned with people's values. They can emphasize developing skills. They can allow and let their employees know that it's okay to make mistakes, and really praise a growth mindset over focusing on an outcome. And then just being encouraging, supportive, reinforcing people that you lead, making sure that you frame feedback as opportunities for growth. I think the biggest thing here is that these things require that you build relationships with the people that you lead. So taking the time to sit down and have a conversation, understand who they are, understand their perspective, their values, their background. This is really important. There's another motivational theory that I think is really relevant, and it's called self-determination theory. It was developed by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan in the 80s, and it's based on satisfying 3 human needs for optimal motivational quality. These 3 needs are autonomy, and that's the ability to give someone the choice to choose what they want to work on and choose what they're going to develop. Competence is giving them the confidence that they need and making sure that they feel supported and good about what they're doing. And the third one, which is really important, is relatedness. And that just means that they feel a sense of purpose in their work. It's bigger than themselves. They're connected with other people, and they're sharing this purpose with other people. So just really feeling that connection throughout a team or throughout the organization is really important for the quality of the motivation. So if the environment is set up upon the 3 human needs, it's said to be an autonomy supportive environment. And the research really shows that people in these environments outperform ones that are set up based on extrinsic motivators. So here's some of the research. Teachers have students that are more confident, more interested in their learning. Coaches have athletes that persist longer over challenges. Their teams function better together. Doctors have patients that take their medications. They exercise more regularly. Bosses have subordinates who perform better, stay with their organizations longer. And finally, parents have students or children that are more adjusted. They get better grades and they have better connections with their friends. So I decided to look at two examples of organizations that were or are on opposite ends of the spectrum, focusing on its people versus focusing on the outcome and how that impacts long-term success. So the first example, which a lot of people know, is the famous downfall of Enron. And obviously, leadership was not so great. The CEO's motto was do it right, do it now, do it better. And so right there, that just shows how much focus is on the outcome. And I think it really led to this disconnect between supporting your people and it caused the executives to make decisions to lie about how much debt the company was in. They did not have their employees' backs, and ultimately, the CEOs, and they end up in prison, and the company goes bankrupt, and it just what seems like really successful in the beginning was totally built on outcome and no care for the people, just totally led to this huge blow up. So I think that was my motivation behind looking at how that environment impacted the downfall. The second company that I looked at was FedEx, because I think the leader, Frederick Smith, is really empathetic towards his customers and his employees. And, he has a quote that talks about a year where they could have decreased the quality of their service to their customers. And he said they probably wouldn't have noticed, but just in his number one commitment, he decided to not shortchange that and to, maybe not get as much revenue for a year, to be more committed to the people. And I think that's what's led him to have a successful company for so many years. FedEx has been on the Forbes top 20 list for over a decade now, and they have a good reputation for their employee relations. They actually brought a company in to work on developing emotional intelligence with their leaders, which just shows how much he values this. And it shows that throughout these trainings, there really has been an increase in performance by focusing on their people. Let me try to pull up the graph here. So the study showed that 59% of the variation in performance and outcome was associated with emotional intelligence. And so here's the graph. As emotional intelligence gets higher, they have better outcomes at work. So they found that, and then after their training, these bars might be hard to see, but after their training, this is before and after, the performance is really going up in each area. So the different areas are influence, decision-making, effectiveness, relationships, and quality of life. And so the qualitative data showed that people said they had a 20% increase in their relationships. They had more trust in their teams. And one manager started talking about how he understood that the way he treats his people really has an effect on how they perform for their team. And I think they also found that while this impacted their life at work, it really impacted their life outside the workplace as well. So I thought that was a cool example. So I'm just going to sum up the last few posts that I had, but I really think the key takeaway here is that empathy is so essential to creating these environments. And as a leader, we have to have the ability to step into someone else's shoes, to see their perspective, and not just see their perspective from how it would be if it happened to us, but to understand how they would feel based on their background, their education, their upbringing, because the way that they see things is different than the way that we see things. So really having that ability to understand where another person comes from, what their motivations are, and trying to help them align their purpose with the organization they're in, the team they're on, the people that they're working with. That's just so important to long-term motivation and well-being, and you're really going to be able to keep people around longer and get them to work for you and for your team better if you can understand where they're coming from. There are some costs to empathy. It can obviously be a source of vulnerability. We want to understand people's perspectives, but not take that pause and not always act out of emotion. So being able to step back and really reflect on someone's perspective without just having a quick emotional reaction. So I think knowing that empathy is important, but also trying to balance our reactions to things and reflect. My final post was on diversity and perspective taking, and I think we can really use our diversities to an advantage. If we're curious about the people that we work with, and as leaders encourage people to bring their ideas to the table and realize that we're not just who we are in the moment, but we're a multitude of experiences and backgrounds. And if we take all those experiences and try to build something better from everybody's diverse backgrounds, we really have the ability to create better teams, more creative teams. It can be challenging because it can be harder to gain trust with people that aren't exactly like us. But if we can really build this trust, then we come out the other end with something so much greater than if we only listen to one perspective or one idea. So I think just sitting in the discomfort of what might be uncomfortable, might be different from us, but really trying to continuously get out of our own perspective and consider somebody else's, we're going to be united in that. So I think we should always try to seek connection. And one of my favorite quotes that I read a few weeks ago in Brene Brown's most recent book, Braving the Wilderness, is Maya Angelou's quote. She says, "You are only free when you realize you belong no place, you belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great." And to me, that quote just really summed up all of these posts that I've been doing and the research that I've been doing, because it says that we as human beings want to feel like we belong. And when we feel like we belong, then we feel like we can truly be ourselves. So if we step into an environment and we know that even though we're different, people accept us, there's trust, then we're going to show up every day as our authentic selves. We're going to bring our ideas, our experiences, our backgrounds to the table and contribute to something greater, contribute to that purpose. So it's that constant push and pull, and setting up that environment that really impacts the individual, but also letting the individual impact the environment. And again, I think that quote totally aligns with self-determination theory of wanting autonomy, wanting to feel confident, but also wanting to be connected to other people at the same time. And so these posts have really been eye-opening to me, and I hope that you all can go back and reference them as well and take them to your teams, because I think ultimately we're all wired the same, and we all have this need to feel connected and to feel appreciated, and also to keep growing and keep improving. So thanks.